Welcome to Pre-Ledge 1. My name is Mr. Goodwin. I'm going to be providing the press training today. These slideshows are set to show you everything you need to do today, as well as what you might need to bring for Pre-Ledge 2, and hopefully answer any questions that you may have along the way. Feel free to pause the slideshow at any time if you need to recap something that happened previously. Also, to help you with that, I've included slideshows of these videos which does not include the audio, so that you could easily recap and look at a slide that you missed. First thing we're talking about are your goals for Pre-Ledge 1. They're pretty simple. Your first main goal is to turn in your non-candidate interview story, which you're supposedly brought with you today. You need to give 3 copies of that to the section advisor. That's the person who is in charge of the program. It should be in your schedule book. I'd ask you also please to email me a copy of that story. I've included my email address there. I'd ask you please also email it as an attachment so I can make corrections on the attachment and send it back to you. Also during this training I'm going to discuss the role of the press and youth in government and what you should be doing at Pre-Ledge. Just a word of caution, as a press member you're supposed to be unbiased, so if you have any campaign stuff on, please take it off. Because you can't be openly campaigning for any candidate. The main thing you're going to be doing today is researching and writing a legislation story. Alright, so when you leave here today, you need all the information that you need to write this legislation story, so please make sure that you have this. I included in an email to you guys my email and a cell phone number where you can text me a message. I'll be checking that throughout this evening to answer any questions as they come up. So please do not hesitate to contact me throughout tonight, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. As you're going through this Pre-Ledge, I am at Williamsville High School. We're doing a Pre-Ledge here as well. So feel free to contact me at any time. At this time, I'd like to go over the non-candidate interview story that you have with you. If you look on the right side of the screen in front of you, you see a sample copy of a non-candidate interview story. I'm going to make the corrections, and you're going to have to make those revisions that I ask you and submit this again during Pre-Ledge 2, and I'll talk more about that towards the end. But if you look at the format of the document, that's kind of important for our program, especially the heading at the top of what needs to be included there, the type of story, the description of the story, the number of words and such that are listed there. Also, make sure when you write a journalism story or some type of article that you keep your paragraphs short. 1 to 2 sentences generally is sufficient for a paragraph in a news story. Let the interviewee speak. You want to have a lot of quotations, so you want to give the people you're interviewing a chance to actually have voice in your article, so make sure you get good quotes, and that applies to the legislation story as well as the non-candidate interview. So when I return it back to you, I may ask you to contact the person you interviewed again to get more of his or her voice in your article itself, because I think that's an important part. I will make comments to this article, return it to you, and I'd ask that you make those revisions, email me back a revised copy, as well as bring 3 revised copies with you to Pre-Ledge 2. Now we're going to move on to what you're going to be doing today. All youth and government groups are going through training today, including you. So your legislators, your lobbyists, all those people are going through similar trainings. Legislators' primary goal today is introducing their bills in committee, and you're going to be going into committee later today for your legislation stories. And like I said, all of the individuals are getting specialized help. Your job is to get information to write a legislation story. That is your main goal, and that's what you kind of have to drive for throughout today. Okay, first thing you need to do is find a piece of legislation that interests you. You should have received a list of the legislation being debated at your Pre-Ledge. It looks something like the sheet that you're seeing on your screen right now. It includes the bill number, the school that is supporting or proposing the legislation, and a brief description of the legislation. Read that over, and you're going to need to pick 1 or 2 that you find interesting and that you would like to write an article about. Please make sure that if there are more than 1 reporter at the Pre-Ledge, you don't choose the same legislation, and please do not pick a piece of legislation from your own school. Try to pick one from a different school. So each of the reporters should be covering something different. Once you make a note of the bill, and the high school introducing the bill highlighted so you know which one you're doing. And as I said earlier, please make sure you haven't duplicated with other press members. So once you have decided which bill you're going to write about, now it's time to get your plan together to write the story. Alright, what I call the game plan. You need to develop a list of questions you're going to ask. What you're trying to do in a legislation story is give a basic summary of what the legislation is about and why the people wrote it. So you need to find this out from the bill sponsors. So I listed some questions that you might want to ask the people who wrote the bill. Why did you write it? Why is it an important issue to you and or the state? What obstacles perhaps do you see this bill encountering in the legislation process? Any questions such as those. They don't have to be that type of question, exact question, but they need to get the information about the legislation out there. The other thing that's important is that you need to talk to all the bill sponsors and the lobbyist for the bill if it has one. Every bill that is written in Youth and Government has legislators that sponsor it, and most of them have a lobbyist assigned to the bill, so you need to find who these people are. I would write these questions down right now before you actually go out of the room. That way when you do find someone to interview, you have the questions ready for yourself. You also want to interview other people in the program to get their opinion about the legislation. Interview quite a few. When I say quite a few, 5, 10, 15 people are great. Ask them what do they think about it. Do they think it will pass or not? Because the format of your story is going to be to introduce the bill and then give a brief statement about what the people think of the bill, what the delegates or other people think about the bill, and what its chances of passing might be. Once you have your questions ready to go, now you're going to be going off to committee. And committees are pretty much the big deal of Pre-Leg 1. That's where all the legislators go into specific committees to talk about the legislation that is going to be introduced in the program. My understanding of the committees of Pre-Leg 1 is they walk through each bill very slowly and carefully the first time to see if there are any mistakes and such. On the schedule you received when you arrived, you will find the agenda for the list of committees. It looks similar to the page that you see on your screen. The committee list will include the bill number, the location of the meeting, and the time. So what you need to do is look at your committees, find your bill number, find out which committee it's being debated in, or what room, I should say, the bill is being debated in, and then you have to get to that room when the debate is taking place. So if you look on the left side of the screen, you see where the bill number is, you see the room number where the bill will be debated, and that's how you find the committee room you should go into. Now sometimes on that schedule you do not see the time for committees, when the committees will actually meet. You could find that on the agenda. Once again, if you look at the agenda on this screen, this is an old one, but you can see that on Friday evening on Pre-Leg 1 the committees met at 7:10. So make sure that you get into the committee when the committee starts so you could hear your legislation that you are covering be debated. It's important that you're there at the right time. Okay, a couple rules about committees, what you can and can't do. Number one, you can't talk in committee. You can't speak to legislation. As a press member, you have to remain silent. You can take notes. You can record. It's public record as far as Youth and Government goes. So anything that is said in committee is fair game for you to quote in your article. Make sure that you accurately quote. Okay, write down as clear as you can what people say. Also, make sure that you get the name of the person you are quoting. Anytime you quote a person, we need that person's full name, spelled correctly of course, their YMCA, their high school, and their job in the program. So for example, Jane Doe, lobbyist from B.R. Ryle, Wheaton, Warrenville South. That's how we list things in Youth and Government. You have you can put the job in Youth and Government anywhere you want, but we always list the Y followed by the high school. So Wheaton Warrenville would be B.R. Ryle, Wheaton Warrenville. Lake Park, I think it's Elmhurst Lake Park. You list the Y, which is Elmhurst, and the high school is Lake Park. Notice there's no punctuation between the Y and the high school. Number 3 on this list is very important. You can pull people out of committee. My understanding is that committees get boring at times. So if you're sitting there and nothing really is happening, you can ask someone to go in the hall so you can interview them. So once you find the sponsor of the bill you are covering in committee, ask to speak to that person in the hall. Make sure you identify yourself as a press member and say you're going to speak to them about their legislation. Have your questions ready. If you can't find the person, ask somebody in the room, do you know where so-and-so is from this school? Most likely someone will, and they could help you out. I would talk to all the sponsors in the hall, and I would also listen to the debate in committee if you can. But make sure that you talk to the sponsors and ask them the questions that you have. You're also going to get a bill brief, which looks like the document on your screen. After you find the person and you find the sponsor, ask them for a copy of their bill brief. This explains what their legislation is, and you can quote this word for word as well. They should have enough copies. If they don't, find somebody in the school who can make you a copy. Please do not leave Pre-Leg 1 without the bill brief. The other thing the bill brief has is the names of all the sponsors, and it explains the detail of the bill. So you necessarily don't have to worry about spelling of names because that will be on the bill brief. Finally, the bill brief may tell you the lobbyist assigned to it. If it doesn't tell you the lobbyist assigned to it, ask the bill sponsors, who's the lobbyist, and then you can go talk to that person as well. Alright, you're done with committee, you talked to everybody, you heard the debate, you got some good stuff, you're ready to go. What do you do now? Now you can go walk around the school and try to find people to get their opinion about the legislation. Most people are in trainings. So what I would do is go to the various training rooms, identify yourself as press member, and see if you can interview some people during their trainings. Get a good number of statements and quotations. Get a wide, diverse group, males, females, different backgrounds, different years in the program, different schools. Don't just interview all males from the same school or all females from the same school. So get as wide of a range as you possibly can. That's pretty much it for the main thing you're doing. So you have to have this stuff. I have the list. You have to have a copy of the bill brief. You have to have statements from the sponsors and or the lobbyist if there is one. You have to have statements from other delegates about the legislation. I would get a minimum of 15 statements. Once you're done with that, you're ready to write. And that's going to be the next slideshow. I just have a couple final things I want to add. We have 8 press members total in the program this year. We're kind of down from last year. So if you're having a great time and you want to do a second piece of legislation, by all means, go ahead and do it. Also, take some photos. We need photos for the paper, so if you have your phone or if you have a camera, you could always email me the photos, go around and take some photos. Please get me the information of who you photographed, what their name is, what they are in the program, and where they are being photographed. Just don't send me a photo without any details. So if you could please do that, that would be terrific if we can get like 5 or 10 photos from each of the pre-leges. But please don't forget, when you take a photo, name of the person being photographed, what school, what they're doing in the photograph. Now, if you don't have any more questions, to flip back through this video, we're going to move on to how to write the legislation story video, which is next on the list. Thanks.